And now we have the logo press. Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to create this satisfying factory loop animation, and I really hope you will enjoy this one. And if you do, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new to the world of 3D and Blender and you want to learn in the fastest and most effective way, be sure to check out my courses. I carefully designed them to take you from beginner skills through local illustration all the way to full character illustration, textured environment. We even have a little bit of sculpting there, hard surface modeling, and so on. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Let's now jump into empty Blender file and let's just select the cube and the light. Press X and delete will leave the camera in place. And let's block out some space for the animation first. So let's press Shift A and let's add a plane. Now tap into the edit mode and let's press Ctrl R to create a cut in the middle here, like this. Right click to release. And now just select these two vertices by holding Shift, press X and delete them. And this will be the base for our belt. So let's press A, and I want the center animation to be happening at the 0 point here. So let's press E and extrude this down. And let's make sure our normals are correct. So press A and Shift N to recalculate them. And now we can tab out and let's go to the modifiers panel and let's add array modifier. So generate array, and let's go -1 on X. And let's do like 5, for example. Depends on how often you want these pieces to be minted to appear. So I think 5 is quite okay. And let's now add a bevel modifier. They'll help us to separate this. And let's increase segments to 2. And let's reduce the amount a little bit. And now in the shading, let's enable harden normals, right click and shade smooth. And now we're going to create the piece to be minted. So let's press Shift A and let's add a plane, tap into the edit mode, press S to scale it down a little bit like this, and then press Ctrl Shift and B to create the vertex bevel and increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel to something like 4 should be enough, maybe 5, so it's more smooth, just like that. Now press A and extrude up, and now we can do small inset by pressing I and extrude again, so it's, you know, there's a little bit of the detail there. And now again, press A and Shift N to recalculate the normals. And now the thing I want to be minted in here is the Blender logo. So it can be anything you want. You can use basically any SVG, but there will be some adjustments we need to make. So I've downloaded the SVG. You can find a link in the description for the Blender logo SVG. So let's go File, Import, and SVG. Don't drag it into your scene. Don't drag and drop it because Blender 4.1 will import it as Greenspan's object. And I will just locate my logo and import it like this, and you can see it's imported into its own separate collection. So we can select it and hit slash on numpad for local view. And now let's make those adjustments. So press 7 on numpad to look from the top, and let's go to the curve settings, and I want the fill mode to none. I want only the outline, because when you convert this to mesh there will be all kinds of triangles and whatnot, and I just want to fill this with like a large N-gon. So I think this will be enough. And now right click and convert to mesh, and we can tab into the edit mode, and this will be the mesh we get. It's a little bit too dense, so you can merge by distance, for example. So if I select all and use merge by distance, then you can expand this and try to play with this value, and you will see you will get a lower amount of these points. So I think something like this should be okay here. Maybe we'll need to fix some things. So let's look from the top, and here I want to move this higher up, and this looks just weird, so let's fix this corner here. But all in all, I think this looks fine. And now let's select this inside circle, press L, hovering over it, and press P and enter to separate this into a new object. And do the same for this one. So select it, press P and enter. So we have 3 objects now here. And now just select the main one and press F to fill. And now we can tab out, and we'll use this middle one to cut a hole in it. So tab into the edit mode, press A to select, F to fill, and E to extrude. And again, make sure you have the normals correct. So press A and Shift N to recalculate them, and press G then Z and move it down. And now we'll cut into this. So tab out. And let's just select the main logo, go to the modifiers, and let's search for Boolean modifier. and we'll choose this object, and by default it's set to difference, so you can see we get the correct result. So we can just apply this, and now we can delete this middle piece and we'll get the hole inside. And now select this one, tab into the edit mode, press A and F to fill, and we'll just join these together. So tab out, hold shift, select the outer logo and press Ctrl J. So now we have this mesh. We can tab in and press E to extrude everything up like this. And again, make sure the normals are correct. So press A and Shift N to recalculate them. So we'll use this Blender logo to cut. So tab out and let's press slash on a numpad. Again, let's look from the top by pressing 7 on a numpad. Tab into the edit mode and we can enable X-ray mode and press G and move it here so it's in the middle there. And let's scale it up. I want the origin point to stay in the middle here. So something like this will probably look okay. We can help ourselves by enabling wireframe view because we have that inset there that's not visible from top. So something like this should be enough. Okay, now we can tab out. Let's look from the front and we'll press G then Z and drag it up like this so it overlaps here a little bit and it cuts inside. So now hold Z, go to solid view, and we can disable X-ray view. And let's select this piece right here, hold shift, select the belt, and we'll transfer the bevel modifier. So click here and copy to select it. Now select this one, right click and shade smooth, and we can play with the amount a little bit. We can make it less rounded. Okay, and now we'll cut into this. You can use the vanilla boolean, or we can go edit, preferences, add-ons, and search for bool tool. And just check the box to activate it. Click Save Preferences and hit the X to close them. And now we can do the same thing as before, but a little bit easier because now we can select the logo, hold Shift, select the piece, and just press Ctrl and minus on a numpad. And you will see it will create the same Boolean modifier with the difference and with the object. But the difference is the cutting object is no longer visible there because the add-on automatically sets the viewport display here to show only bounds. So for example, if you don't have a numpad and these shortcuts don't work for you or something with the bool tool add-on, just use the standard Boolean modifier and then select the logo object and set display as bounds and do the Boolean modifier as here, and it should work nicely. Now when you have this, just select the logo, hold Shift, select the piece and press Ctrl P and parent to object. And now we'll select this one, hold Shift and parent it to belt. So Ctrl P and parent. So when we move the belt, this moves as well. And here you can see the faces. That's because the Boolean object doesn't have the smooth shading. So right click and shade smooth here. And now you can see we get this weird shading. So let's select the main object and we'll add another modifier, and that'll be smooth by angle. That's the new one in 4.1. And they'll basically create this. Just make sure you have enough angle here to account for all the angles. Now let's finish up with the rest of the animation scene. So let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. Tap into the edit mode, we can press R, then Y and 90 to rotate 90 degrees. And let's scale it up a tiny bit like this. And now let's select top verts, press G, then Z them up. Press Ctrl Shift B to create the bevel, and we can increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel. And now just select the bottom vertices, press X and delete edges. So we are left with something like this. Now press A and then E then X to extrude along X-axis like this. And then press A and Alt E and extrude faces along normals. Now let's go outside and we can press S for even scaling and do something like this. And again, don't forget to press A and Shift and to recalculate normals. And now let's press Shift A and we'll add a cylinder and tab into the edit mode, scale it down a little bit like this, and then S then Z to scale on Z axis as well. We'll tab out and press G then Z and move it up here like this. And you can see there's an offset. We'll deal with that later. So let's hold Shift S and snap cursor to select it, and let's press Shift A and we'll add another cylinder. Tab into the edit mode and let's press S then Shift Z to scale on X and Y axis like this. Okay, and now let's press 3 for face select the top face, and we'll press G then Z and move it up a little bit like this. And now we'll create the minting press down there. So select this face, hold Shift and snap cursor to select it. And now tab out and let's press Shift A and let's add a plane. tab into the edit mode and let's scale it down a little bit. Let's look from the top and we can enable X-ray view here so we can see the underlying piece. We want to cover it, so something like this, and then press Ctrl-Shift-P to create a similar radius there, something like that. Press A and extrude this down. And now let's press I for inset, and let's make this a little bit smaller. And E to extrude up, and again A and Shift-N to recalculate normals, and you can see how the shading changed a little bit, so the normals were actually flipped. So now we can tab out and disable X-ray view. And finally, let's hold Shift-S, snap cursor back to world origin, and we can press Shift-A and create an empty. We'll use that to move our belt along. Select the belt, hold Shift, select the empty, press Ctrl-P and parent to object. Now let's give these objects some shading, so let's select them all, hold Shift, select the belt, and we'll just transfer the bubble modifier to those. Select them again, right click and shade smooth. And basically that's all we need to do. And now select this and hold Shift and parent it to this one here. So when you move this, the whole thing moves. And this way we'll be able to create this kind of movement. And by moving this, we're able to create this movement. If it's a little bit too slow for you when you try to move it like this, just select this piece and switch the solver to fast. And now if you select this, this should be more smooth. Because it will be really painful to do the animation with the boolean, with the exact method active. So now we can select the belt, hold Shift and hit right bracket a few times until we select all the objects that are part of it. And now press Alt D, X and 5. They'll move it 5 meters, and let's hit enter. And now let's press Alt D, X and -10, hit enter, and Alt D, X and -5 and enter. So we have duplicates of these objects, and they're all parented to the empty because the main one was. So if I move this, all of them move at once, and they have the same modifiers and everything, but the modifiers can be adjusted separately, which is what we'll need to do here. So for example, select this one and just disable the modifier here, both for viewport and rendering, and do the same thing for this one. So you can see these are already minted, so their modifiers are active, and these only wait for the press to happen. And now we can just build the rest of the scene a little bit. So let's press Shift-A and let's add a plane. Let's tab into the edit mode and scale it up. Let's make it really large. Tab out and let's look from the front, press G then Z and move it down here. I want the simplicity of having everything happening on point 0 here, so that's why I'm moving around a little bit down there. Now let's hold Shift-S, snap cursor to select it, and let's press Shift-A and add a plane. Now tab into the remote and press R, then X and 90 to rotate 90 degrees. And press G, then Z and 1 to move this 1 meter up, so we know it sits on the bottom there. And we can press S, then X to scale it up. And now tab out and scale it. And press G, then Y and move it away a little bit. So now if we look through the camera, we get something like this. We get a little environment and everything, and a little bit of a wall there. So now we can play with the camera angle. I think this is too shallow, so let's hit N, and in the view settings, let's enable camera to view, and we can now use our viewport controls to rotate this a little bit from the upper angle. And now don't forget to disable this, and we can leave the panel open, just switch to item. And now let's animate this. So first of all, this will move these 5 meters because one piece is 1 meter long, because we just created a plane, split this in half. And there are 5 of those. That's why I was moving things 5 and 10 meters respectively. So now we can expand the animation. Let's set the frames only to like 40. That'll be enough. And on a frame 1, I want to select the empty because that's the thing we're gonna move. And let's insert X location keyframe. So right click and insert single keyframe. And let's move to frame 30. And let's move this to 5. And right click and insert single keyframe. So this is the movement we have here. And now just select this keyframe and press Shift D to duplicate it. And let's look at the animation graph. So Control Tab here in the animation so we can see the curve. And I want this to be more steep. I want this to be more snappy. So let's just select this handle and move it all like this. So the animation starts really fast in the beginning and then slows down. So what we'll have here is something like this. But it got a little bit of springiness in it, so we need to bring the handle a little bit lower, like this. Okay, great. And as you can see, the animation starts with the logo pressed and then just moves here, and then the whole thing repeats basically. So we need to make sure we press the logo in here, and that'll be basically it. So first of all, let's select this one and let's create the minting movement or the pressing movement. And let's go to like frame 25 and let's create the Z location keyframes. So right click and insert single keyframe. Let's look from the front. And now at frame 40, let's press G then Z and let's move it down like this, for example. And right click and insert single keyframe. And let's expand the animation. You can do it in the output as well. So let's set the end frame to 50. They'll make the animation longer. And while we're at it, let's set frame rate to 30. And now let's play it back. And now we need to go back here. So just select this keyframe right here, press Shift D, then X, and move it right there to frame 50. And now we'll make this more sharp. So you can just select all of the keyframes and press period on a numpad to focus. Or you can hold Control and use middle mouse button to zoom in or out by moving your mouse up and down and left and right. So now just select this keyframe, press V to change to free. Now we're freely able to select these handles and move them separately. And let's create this really sharp movement here, like this. So this will be the movement we get. Let's look from the camera. I think that's great. So now we can actually play with the logo. So here the logo will appear at frame 40. So let's select the piece. And now let's go to modifiers panel. And here we have these deactivated. So let's go to frame 1 and just press I hovering over these. You will see they go yellow. So there's a keyframe there. And now just move to frame 40 and let's enable those and press I again, hovering over. And you will see these keyframes will happen here. And they're on and off switches basically. That's why there's no curve. They're either off or on. And now we have the logo press. So basically that's it for the animation. Now we'll just make it look a little bit nicer. So first of all, let's go to render settings. I will switch this to cycles, GPU, enable denoising, and also use GPU for the open image. And now I'll set this to something like 128 and same for viewport, and press Ctrl B and limit the preview only to camera bounds. Let's now select this piece right here. Let's go to material settings, create a new one, and let's go full metallic and something like 0.3 for roughness. And now let's create a new material slot, create a new material, and we'll call this light, and switch the principled to emission. And now let's go something really strong like 20. And now we'll assign that each side. That will look great. When it actually moves up and down, it will change the light. So press 3 for face select, select this face, select the light material and hit assign. Now if I hold Z and switch to render preview, this is what we get here. So let's look from the camera. And now you will see as it goes down, it will basically become darker and then shed the light on the logo again. And now let's press Shift A and let's add some area light. Press G then Z, move it up and let's make it larger. Let's give this like 500 strength and press G then X and move it back. So there'll be some ambient light. Maybe we can move it around a little bit. And let's make it colder. Let's make it blue. And here we can go a little bit orangey. Okay, and then we can select this one, press Shift D, X, and create one light here as well. Make it smaller, maybe a little bit weaker, something like 150, and let's make it red. So you have a nice color scheme. And now I will set the same metal material to the surrounding objects as well, so we get nice reflections. And don't forget about the press here. Like that. And to make these reflections a little bit nicer, you can use HDRI. You can either go to polyhaven.com and download some HDRI, or you can use their add-on and import everything into the asset browser. So I have it right here, and I will just choose the asset browser, go for HDRIs, indoor, artificial light. Let's go for something with high contrast, and abandoned bakery looks great. So I'll just drag it into our scene and you will see it changed. So now I will switch the shader editor and switch this to world. And this is basically the bakery HDRI. And if you import it as an asset like this, you get to play with warmth settings and tint. So we can make it a little bit colder and then reduce to something like -3. So it will give us still great reflections and great light quality, but it will not overblow the scene. And then to make the scene a little bit more interesting, you can select this area light, go back to timeline, and let's go to frame 1 and press I here. Go frame 50, do that again and add around, let's say 25. We can set this to 0 and press I. So now if I press Ctrl Tab and press A and period on a numpad, you will see this light curve. You will see this curve here, and you will see the red light goes off here and then on. So there'll be like a danger light or something, and we can make it more snappy here like this. And I will change color to something more or less purple like that. And then maybe shift right click here and let's press Shift A, and I'll create a point light here to give this a more lighting around here, so it's not visible from the camera, and something like 50 maybe, and orange color. Okay. And then basically you're free to kind of give this scene whatever you want. You can create something under the belt, some mechanics there, or some tubes, pipes, some decorations on the wall, something to give this scene more details, but I want this to be a short tutorial, so I will leave it like this and now just proceed to the settings that will make this look great. So first of all, in the render settings, make sure you enable motion blur, and then select the camera, go to camera settings and enable depth of field, and in the viewport display will show limits. And now we can change the distance here to focus on our piece right here. You will see how it starts to overlap when you set the correct distance. So that's what we're looking for, so it goes through the logo. And now for the f-stop, let's go something really artificial, something like 0.3, so it's really strong and really blurs the scene in the background. Maybe even something like 0.2, and it will kind of create this micro scale effect, and I think it looks really great. And now in the render settings we can play with the contrast settings, so something like medium high, and then with the exposure. So if you think your lights are too weak, you can maybe bring up the exposure. And if the logo is not too visible, we can easily change material inside. It's just a little bit tricky, so let's go to material settings. Let's create a new material slot. Let's pick the same metal material and let's duplicate it, and let's leave it like this. And now select the Boolean object and let's give that the same material. Remember, they both need to have material slot with the same material on them. And now, since it's duplicated, we can just make it a little bit darker, and it will work only on the cut part. So let's make it a little bit darker so it's better visible. And here we can make this stronger. But overall, this is the final animation. Now just go output and change the PNG to FFmpeg. And for the encoding, I tend to use MP4. And then just pick your folder here, hit render, render animation, and wait out your frames. But overall, this is what you should get. So that's it for today's animation tutorial, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, please don't forget to leave that like, and if you're new around here, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.